You are listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast, hosted by Tom Baker. Thank you for listening. Your position has been triangulated. Drone army has been dispatched to your location. Commencing attack run in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Bravo Creative Podcast, episode 3. Well, it has been, just so you know, it has been a little bit of an ordeal getting this one going. My guest has informed me that there has been maybe a little bit of bad mojo in the air today. And my guest today is...
I feel like a co-host.
You're more of a co-host now. We've been here so long. To full transparency, the power has been going out, and every time it goes out, it totally tanks the recording. So this is like recording number 4, I think. We get started, and all of a sudden it just goes to pot. But hey,
you said you liked rehearsals. So
you know what?
Huh?
I think what was that? And that was in the first one
side.
we were doing. We were just talking.
Right. I love that. That was in the first. Was it the first
that wasn't
episode?
The first.
Yeah. The first take.
So my guest today is a very good friend. He is very inspiring. He's very talented, and I met him about a year ago on set, working on a film called Pushing Envelopes. And when I had first heard the legend of this gentleman, he was highly admired by many people that I spoke with. And being new to the area and being an actor myself, I had just maybe a touch of animosity. And I was like, whatever. Yeah, right. And so then, lo and behold, I got on set of the film Pushing Envelopes, and I met him. And all of it's true. And I am a total convert. And he's a great friend. I love him to death. Welcome to the microphone, Mr. Mickey Stone.
I'd just like to say that I loved you from the start.
Golly. It is bromance. It is a little bit of a bromance. No, that's awesome.
Proud to be here. Thanks, man.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. And like I said, this is
We're gonna get this right.
Today has felt just like, No, Mickey, I wanted to have you on the podcast. I am intrigued by where you started and where you are now, because that is, for me, it feels unconventional, but I think that that's really cool. And then also your journey over the last, roughly a decade of working in independent film here in the local Springfield, Missouri area. You have quite the list of films that you have worked on, and there is a certain archetype that you play in a lot of those.
True.
And that's intriguing in and of itself, especially when you get to know how nice of a guy you are and how you wind up getting those types of parts. I'm curious as to kind of what your thoughts are on that as we go down the road. Mm-hmm. But as of IMDb right now, you have, it says 42 acting credits, but I think it's probably more accurate that it's about, maybe 39 acting credits right now as of to date?
I would say, here's what I would say. I think there are a few projects that I know of that it kind of goes both ways, right? Sometimes there are projects that wind up on IMDb that never actually appear, right, or turn into an actual film. And there are other films that are out there somewhere but have not been listed on IMDb.
Okay.
So,
and I want to talk about that.
Let's say 45.
Yeah, I want to talk. Oh, so you'd say that's a little higher number.
Yeah.
So you have around 45. We'll say we'll put an asterisk next to it. You have 45 acting credits on IMDb. You have 3 producer credits.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
I would say that's probably accurate. Yeah.
3 producer credits.
As far as I know, everything on there is
3 stunt credits.
Yeah.
Did you ever
That's
get
probably
caught,
a little shy.
Did you ever get caught on fire?
I've never done a body burn.
Okay.
No. But I've been on set while it's been done. I've watched it happen.
Really?
Yeah.
You have 2 writer credits.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have 1 director credit.
Yeah.
And then you have one transportation credit.
Yes. The one I'm most proud of.
The limo driver?
Oh, it wasn't a limo.
Oh,
No.
okay.
It was probably bringing lunch or something, taking someone to.
Well, I want to get into some of those. There's actually a couple that I want to like focus on because there's a couple of them that I've watched, and I know that you've got some input on some of those. But getting to this point of having all of these films for about a decade prior to that, you were doing radio work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, yep. So you started radio work, and the thing that we've talked about, and it, like I said, intrigued me, was that you come from a background of not being in an area that you really had
no access.
You had no access to these types of, I don't know, outlets for creativity growing up. Which, I mean, a lot of us, to be fair, a lot of us our age didn't have a lot of those unless we lived in a big, huge, major city. We didn't have those growing up. But you, particularly, growing up is like near Gainesville, correct?
Ish, yes.
Ish, Gainesville-ish, which there is a lot of ish around Gainesville, right?
Yeah. There's not much Gainesville, but there's a lot of ish.
Right.
Yeah.
So
most people come into Gainesville for supplies.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they go back out to the ish. Back to the ish.
Absolutely. It's beautiful.
So talk about starting in Gainesville as a kid, and then all of a sudden you got a wild hair and decided to go into radio broadcast. Is that correct?
That's correct. Basically, and I don't know, but there was a broadcast station in Springfield that was called the Southwest School of Broadcasting. It was ran by Johnny, was his name, Johnny Jones, as a matter of fact, and they ran a ton of television commercials. And I would say, in one of our previous incarnations here that got lost into the ether,
they're all starting to blend together right now.
WKRP was a hit on television.
Sure.
And so I would say that it was probably like a combination. And there was always, I want to say through, I don't know, maybe the late 80s, there was kind of this mystique with working in radio, and there were some films and there was some television.
Yeah.
And, they kind of gave you at least, I'm not sure how accurate it was. Some of it was pretty accurate, and others not so much. But there was interest in it, and it was a big thing. And because that was that school was something that I could go through, and did in about 6 months be working in radio. And at the time, you had to get a
certificate,
third class. You had to have a third class FCC license to be on the air, and that was basically you went through their course, and they had some mock studios where you would go in and record your air checks, and then Johnny would grade them, and they would get you ready to take the test, which was like a federal test, to get your FCC license.
Now, when you say air check and Johnny would grade you, what was he grading you on?
There's a variety of things, like enunciation. I remember one of the things that they did if somebody was kind of mushy about how they talked, and it wasn't really. They would give you some copy to read, and you'd bite on a cork while you read it.
You bite on a cork?
Mm-hmm. So that you had to open your mouth wider in order to get everything out.
I wonder if that works.
It does work. I've seen it happen. Yeah.
I'm not going to use a cork, but I'll use them. Hello, my name is Tom Baker. And it actually kind of does work.
It does work.
A little bit, yeah.
No, it really does work. Yeah.
Huh. I never heard about that. That's kind of neat.
Johnny, I can't remember. He had worked in like big markets. I mean, he was, long since retired at that point, but he knew his stuff. And
so it was an overall positive experience then going through and doing all that.
Yes. And a couple of, there was a local DJ at the time who went by Shane Knox. He was one of the instructors there. And someone who I consider at the time, and still do and always will, as a mentor, Dave Richmond, who worked at KTTS. and he taught at the school as well. So he worked there, and then he would come over and teach a shift there. And and these voice exercises that I do to this day are from him.
So were these guys like working DJs then? Like they got done after teaching a class and they were out on
Dave was. I don't know that Shane was at the time, but he had been. Yeah.
So you could go out and listen to their
and actually, now that I think about it, I sat in with Shane one morning. He used to work at there was a station downtown, if you're familiar with Springfield, where the Landmark building is at. It was up in, I think, the top, but it was KORX. And I sat in with him one morning, and then I sat in with Dave at KT, probably a time or two. I can remember sitting in on Dave Richmond's show. He did, I want to say he did afternoons at KT. He worked on their AM station there, which was also a country station. And if you're familiar at all with what was the format at the time, it was extremely busy. I mean, and you had, there was none of this existing technology. They were playing, all of their music was on carts, which looks like an 8-track tape.
They had like stacks of them?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have cart decks. So
you had to go load them all in?
Yeah, you would have, all of your commercials were on separate carts, so you had to load them one at a time. And I'm trying to think, there was only one station that I worked for that still did that. But at the time, that's what they did. So you have to imagine plugging a cart in, and it says on it how long it is, but it doesn't tell you when it's running, right? And he was having to back time. He would play 2 songs, and then he would hit news. He'd play 2 songs, and he would hit weather. He'd play 2 songs, and he'd hit this. There was like static, hard times.
So it wasn't automated at all. You were having to manually go in and run all of it.
I was sitting there watching this saying, I'm never going to be able to do this. Ever. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it would have been tough. Even in a period of time where I got to a point where I was as good as I ever got, it still would have been tough to do what he was doing.
You realized pretty quick then, while you were doing the actual schoolwork, that was the slog of the job.
It depended on the station, right?
So yeah.
I mean, because KT, which was and remained, and I don't know if that it is now or not, it's went through several different ownerships at this point, but was the #1 station by far in this market, right? Like I said, it was a super, super busy format. Some of the formats that I worked for, like you said, AOR, which was album-oriented rock, you were playing, 12-minute Pink Floyd songs,
right,
and this and that.
You had
time to do whatever, right, in the meantime. But, yeah, it depended on the format, yeah. Some of them were certainly easier than others, and there are all different, paces and energies and emotions to the whole thing.
Wow. So, and you did that for about a decade, right? You did the radio.
Yeah, at least 10 plus years.
And then you got into commercial work, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of opened your door into doing voiceover.
Yeah. Well, I had done, that was just kind of part of the thing, right? If you worked in radio, basically what you did is you did your show or your shift, however you want to refer to it. And then typically you would get off the air and you would spend a couple hours doing commercials or what have you, if you were the music director or the program director, right, or whatever. So, I'd done commercials for the entire time that I was in radio. And then at that point in time, I was working in Springfield, and there was access to, at the time, local television stations that recorded their own commercials and needed voices for that. And so
and that's when you jumped in.
Yeah.
So you did that, and then you kind of tell us how you got into, because like I said, you've been doing independent films since about 2008?
Yeah, I would say that's fairly accurate. Yeah. I want to say like 05 to 08, somewhere in there. I'm not sure.
So, and you started doing those local independent films, just kind of picking them up as you went along?
Yeah, it was the first one that I did, I believe, was for a gentleman by the name of Daryl Clonch, who's an incredible friend, and love you, D. He was a creative service director at one of the stations that I did work for, and he was, I assume would still call himself a filmmaker. He works in the industry itself. Still
He does,
to this
he does
day.
visual effects, doesn't he?
Yes.
Because I met him down at Ozark Web
yeah,
Fest.
you did.
Yeah.
But he had a film that he was filming, still in the process of doing like principal photography, and he mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Well, I'd like to do that. You know, if you got anything I can do, I'd like to do that." So that's where it started, and I did a bit in a noir film where I played a dirty cop called Black and White, I think was the original title for it, and then I worked in a zombie film.
Now, the Daryl's film Black and White, where can we see that at?
If you make a scheduled time with Daryl, and maybe he can show it to you.
Oh, it's on it's on his hard drive.
And I said my film is not finished either, so no, I'm not. Just a typical thing. You and I have had this conversation many times. Lots of people we know, myself included, have films that are in an unfinished stage. But yeah,
what's the quote? Great films go to the edit room to die.
Yeah, they go to post-production to die.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's not. It's not. As far as I'm aware of, anyway, it's not available for public viewing.
Maybe we'll see if Daryl can release a underground cut,
like
for
a
us.
director's cut. Yeah.
Did you get to see any of it?
I saw the dailies from it.
You saw
as
the
we
dailies
shot,
from it,
but I don't remember seeing like a rough cut or anything like that.
So obviously you enjoy this independent film process.
Yeah.
What is it that you love about it?
I think that just being a part of it was kind of like, getting involved with radio, and that it was, at the time that was really because, as you had said, there was no drama club, and I didn't have any theater to get involved with or anything like that, or certainly wasn't any film production around that I could have gotten a part in. So radio was a way to get involved with entertainment in some way, and go that route.
It seemed feasible.
Yeah, it was. It could be done.
Yeah,
it could be done. And I, still to this day love music. I'm not a musician in any way, and it enabled me to be able to take part in it, even though I couldn't pick up a guitar or didn't. And film was also particularly powerful to me, as a individual. It had an effect on me watching films and
so
watching
you watched
scenes.
Cinema when you were a kid,
as much as I could. Yeah.
Did they have a movie theater near where you lived?
I would say that the closest movie theaters that I can remember going to were an hour one way or an hour another way, or there was a drive-in that was about 30 minutes away. But I mean, at the time, as I got in, we were talking about the VHS came in, right? And that was like the best thing.
Oh, it changed the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Changed the world.
So you could live in a very isolated or rural area and see all these films. You just got to go down and pick them up.
Back when we were back in the 80s, some great films back then.
Yeah,
they were just fun. They were just fun films.
Yeah,
and you can go back and look at some of them now, and you're like, wow, these still hold up. These are still great little films. And it's not. It can't be replicated.
It
really can't. I hate to say it, because of our political culture right now, it's just hard to replicate some of that stuff.
I just don't see that in general. I just think everything. I mean, technology, right?
We're too serious.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go to a theater now to watch a film. And I think that it's kind of I've had this particular conversation with several filmmaker friends, and it's kind of like the best and the worst of things. because you could watch film all day and all night forever and not see all the films that are out there, right?
Right.
So the access to it is seemingly wondrous.
Right.
But there's also so much content available now that you'll never see it. And there'll be great, stupendous films and music that you'll never be aware of.
Right.
Ever. Right? Because there are so many different platforms.
Oh yeah. There's an endless supply of media out there now.
Yeah. So
especially like with TikTok and all that stuff that's going on, you got tons of little short films that are being produced. Like one just got done. Oh wait, now another one just got done. I mean, that's the reality of it.
And so the positive of that, of course, is that your film or your music or whatever, it's actually feasible to get it out into the public and get it in front of ears and eyes, right?
Right.
But also doesn't make the impact that it once did. As an example, like if you were a star, right? If you were a star on one of the 3 networks, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody knew who that person was, right? Now it's so that pie is sliced into so many thin little pieces.
Yeah, it's so saturated right now.
Yeah,
so
buffet of film.
Not to get too far in the weeds as far as some of your films, because I do want to talk about those here in a minute. But what I want to talk about is that initial getting into acting, because that is not, and I know this from just experience, is getting into acting is not easy, and especially when you're looking at being in as many films as you've been in over the years. How did that process start for you of obviously getting into one film, but was it more of like because you got into the film with Daryl, then you got into a film with someone else and it was kind of like did you actually like start pursuing and auditioning and going out there for stuff? How did that initially start for you?
It was a little bit of both. Because I think, I say the local, but I think any like regional film community, people know, oh yeah, that guy was in my buddy's film and he did pretty good, or whatever, he was good to work with, or he wasn't, or what have you. So it was a little bit. I mean, there was some networking involved where I was lucky enough to be in something, and that was seen or heard about. And then there were also some things that I began looking for opportunities to work too.
Right.
So it was kind of a combination of the two. Yeah.
Any good advice you got along the way from anyone in particular that, like initially when you got started, that you think maybe might have changed the course for you had you not heard it?
I was lucky in that the first couple of things that I did, several actually, were of it was a friendly crew and a friendly cast and a friendly director, and it gave me the opportunity to figure out the mechanics of how things worked, maybe paying attention to the lighting or the framing of a camera, and just knowing how to stay out of the way of an ongoing production, things like that. Yeah, I mean, I learned from everybody.
Right.
I mean, I wanted to, tried to. Yeah.
I would assume your creative process may be somewhat unconventional, but I'm just curious as to when you get a part, you pretty much take every part you get, or have you turned down some stuff?
That's an interesting question. Have I turned down some stuff? I don't know that I've had anything that I was just like, that I couldn't figure out some way, at least in my own mind, to make it work. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like I've certainly had things that schedule-wise I was not able to do because
Sure.
something else was already being filmed, or there was a concrete date here or there, and so I would have to maybe drop out of something like that. Yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, as you pointed out, I mean, it is a variety of different parts that I've played, but there's also some connective tissue as to what they have in mind.
Sure.
So
Would you say
that's
most
probably
of your
helpful.
characters are bad guys?
I would say that it's fair to say that it's a combination of quote unquote bad guys,
The heavy?
anti-hero, the heavy, yeah. Not entirely. I mean, there's
Maybe that's what we'll title this episode is, The Heavy.
the heavy, yeah.
The Heavy Mickey Stone.
It's been a kind of probably somewhat of a surprising mixture. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There was a short film that I did not too long ago. Well, I say that now. I guess it's been longer than I thought, but it's I think still in kind of a festival run. I think the working title on it, the final title was Under the Elm Tree, which was a father kind of a role, and a very emotional one. The scene itself, it's basically one long scene. So, and Pushing Envelopes is another example of something I know. I had worked with and was friends with Miss Debbie Sutcliffe for years, and she was kind enough to give me that particular part, and I think that it worked.
But she kind of played on that,
Oh, she definitely
honestly,
did.
for the
Yeah.
local audience, she kind of played on that. And
Yeah.
I think that was kind of a neat thing. I mean, obviously people in, wherever are not going to necessarily get in on that gag. I mean, obviously you've played
That's true.
that. So locally, it was really easy to pull that off. But you did it just fine. So that and whoever filmed it, I mean, did a masterful,
masterful
he did
job.
a masterful job of telling that story.
No,
but,
I mean, a true maestro.
that is such bull.
No, it's really not. The interesting thing with that's a good point, and in thinking of that, because you've done a lot of heavies too, right?
In theater. Theater wise, I've always played kind of the anti-hero, the bad guy.
And it's when I played Ray, was the character in Pushing Envelopes. In playing a heavy or something like that, to me, there's a way of selling it that's of posture and
Yes.
a way of movement.
Oh, definitely,
I
definitely.
think that you can soften it. I mean, you can if you're super paying attention to it, you can go from the heavy to the not, and back and forth.
I mean, posture's huge in, especially on stage.
I'm sure.
Stage acting is from head to toe.
Yeah.
Whereas, film acting, can be, your eyes, your nose, and your mouth.
Right.
Depending on what framing you're going to be using.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest. It's the biggest challenge, but it's also the fun part of it. It's different in so many other ways. But to your point, and I'm just curious, you have played that part, and you brought up something interesting, which was posture, or being able to soften it. Or what are the challenges of playing a quote unquote heavy? I think we all look at, and sometimes when we look at those parts, they're always the fun parts, or,
right?
Those type of people. We always look at it and go, "Wow, that we don't want to like him, but we like him." So what in your eyes makes that character or that character type? What makes them interesting? Because you've obviously tapped into it to a point that people go, "I want this guy to play that." So.
I think, I'm just in here like rolling a montage in my mind of people that I've watched and that I've essentially stolen from, basically. And, it varies. to me. And I think it depends on a given part as to, you know, what the go-to is on it. I mean, to me, a huge thing has always been eyes. Like John Saxon, who recently passed away, is a huge actor in the 70s and Enter the Dragon. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows him from Enter the Dragon. That was like his big story.
Right.
It was like he could be getting robbed in the parking lot, and the rib would be that eventually somewhere in there the burglar would be asking him about what was it like to work with Bruce Lee. Anyway, but he worked in Italy when, you know, like him and other guys like Henry Sullivan, people like that, and Fred Williamson were going over there and making Italian films.
Sure.
And, you know, he said that one of the things that one of the many directors told him is that, okay, if you're going to be the bad guy, you can never blink.
Really?
No blinking.
No blinking.
No blinking. And he also told him that if he was the heavy or whatever, that he needed to be looking down at people, like literally, like his nose up and he's looking down, because he couldn't possibly be on his level. Those things like that, you know, and then
so little cues, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's as far as film is concerned, those are the types of things that I always picked up on.
Sure.
Just, I mean, because it interested me. It was like, that's, you know, not really doing a whole lot there, but yeah, they are, you know.
Yeah, it's always been one of those things. I mean, and I kind of got into it early on because for some reason it fit, and people started saying, "Hey, I want you to play this part because you're," I don't know. It's just my first was I played George in Of Mice and Men.
Yeah, of course.
And he's a conflicted character.
Very.
And, you know, if you don't know the ending of it, it's not good. And it's not a toe tapper by any means. And but that character always kind of stuck with me. Mm-hmm. Even though I know that when I did that part, I didn't do it great. I didn't do it justice at the time. It was my first role like that, but it was heavy. It was 69 pages of lines, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's Steinbeck, you know, it was just thick. But one of the things that always interests me about it is those were the characters, the ones that had conflict, like real, true conflict. And they didn't necessarily think they were the bad guy, but they knew they weren't the good guy.
Yeah.
You know, they knew that they were
it's a level of gray.
Yeah. And those are always the characters that I've always enjoyed playing. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's easy for other people to come and see that and go, oh, you can play that part real easy then. You know, you're going to do fine on that. Is that conflicted character? Because I think you have to really move a person and for them to really feel like you are a bad guy, you have to have, as an actor, you have to have sympathy. Number one, you have to be able to sympathize with people's emotions, to be able to honestly manipulate their emotions in essence. And you got to have empathy. Fair. You got to have empathy too. Yeah. You got to be able to look at it and go, I know this is why you feel bad. Sure. So I'm going to do this because I know I think playing bad guys is fairly hard sometimes. And that's why, you know, from your standpoint, you definitely have some cues, little nuances that you use in your roles that I like the tick that you have on a character. And it's not always the same either, but I'm curious, where do you get your ticks from? Do you pull that from past experience? Huh? But do you pull that like do you pull that like from your dad or your grandpa or somebody like that? Is there inspiration behind some of those ticks that you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly inspiration.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, so I think we talked about this one time before about Marlon Brando. Because Marlon Brando has some very nuanced things that he does in his performance. He adds these very, like in The Godfather, he starts rubbing his head, you know? And it's kind of like, you see an actor do that and you're like, why are they doing that? You know? Mm. But he does it and you're like, yeah, leave it in there. Looks good, you know?
Right.
But you kind of have that same type of, you like to add in some of those little nuances to things.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to do too much,
overdo it. Yeah,
right. But like with Brando and with all of those early method actors and actresses, Dennis Hopper.
Oh yeah,
right. James Dean. They just seemed like, I don't know. Brando was in a lot of terrible films, and he said as much, right? I mean, he cashed a lot of checks. But in the worst of films, I could sit there and watch his scenes and pick up something, right? I mean, I'm not even sugarcoating it when I say, as an actor, I steal, right? Or
sure.
at the very least, parody. Things that are effective, seemingly to me anyway, in a film.
Well, let's go back.
And a lot of them are small, just like you said. It's just like, because with the camera, it doesn't have to be much of anything.
Yeah, but you have to be aware of what you're doing, though, too.
Yeah.
And I think what you said earlier of, when you get on set, be aware of your performance, because that's another whole beast in and of itself. Is all of the little things. I mean, and I don't even want to get into it yet, because quite honestly, because I do want to talk to you about that, just kind of because you are the old pro on the film acting and I am the young buck as far as film acting. I do have a couple of questions for you.
I have no theater experience whatsoever.
Right, so. But film is, I mean, in my opinion, film is a completely different beast.
Oh, it is. There's no doubt. But what I'm saying is
like
is that
stage performance.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got untold theater experience, right? Which equals, I'm sure.
Well, it does
as much or more than I've worked in film.
I think the trade-off is equal. I really do think the trade-off is equal. I think there's what takes a longer period of time in theater, you're only going to have a limited number of times and your euphoria off of it lasts for about 2 hours.
Okay.
So you rehearse multiple times over multiple days, and then you get to like a show week or maybe 3 show weeks, and you do 3 shows a week. So you got 9 performances that you're going to wind up ultimately doing. And you do those 9 performances and you have euphoria for about 2 hours. Like, ooh, I'm jazzed. And then you crash.
Yeah.
Whereas film acting was a little bit different. It was start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, stop. You're doing those scenes multiple times, and so you're
oftentimes not in order,
right? And your anxiety is all over the place. And then sometimes you might sit for an hour while they do a setup, and then all of a sudden you got to be going 110 miles an hour again, or you need to be you need to be crying, or you need to be raging out or whatever. So there's a difference between the two of those, and one of them is almost like a soda bottle that is shaken up and then it ultimately explodes at the end. But then the other is just like quick little splurts all over the place. Is what film acting felt like in a way. And
I think most people who certainly myself included, right before I became involved with it at all, had no idea the amount of time spent just waiting.
Yeah.
just waiting, for things to get set up. I mean, it takes time, for everything to be right. And then, like you say, then the scene happens and you've got to be in that moment, whatever that is, and then shoot it several times. You have to get all the angles, and you're wide and you're mid and you're close up, and before you move on to something else. So yeah, I don't,
I think that was one of the things I actually enjoyed about it, is I enjoyed going in, because I look at all this as kind of like troubleshooting anyways. I mean, in troubleshooting a scene, looking at it going, how do I visually tell that, so that the other person over there believes me. And one of the things that I thought was neat was that you could go in and you could do that scene, and then you kind of had an idea of what scene you were going to do. You had a good idea of what scene you were going to do. Mm-hmm. It could always change.
Yes.
Like we had it change about 4 or 5 times with us when we were doing Land of Milk and Honey, which was a little frustrating, and I voiced my opinion on those things. But as far as like, you get there and you have time to sit and think about it. It's not just waiting. It's kind of, it's your...
Yeah, no, of course. You're absolutely right.
It's a very quick marination of going through and going, okay. And I enjoyed the pressure of going, hey, we're going to be filming in about an hour on this, or in about 30 minutes, or about 15. Mm-hmm. And so you could go, okay, let me get myself going. And I think theater helped me in that regards of being able to, it gave me good habits. Whereas I can see people that start in film first could learn some bad habits from going from film, then going to theater, because it is a little bit different.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I would think.
I don't know that for sure. I'm speculating on that,
that's,
though.
Probably correct. I mean, I would think that anyone as an actor or an actress, if would benefit from having experience in theater in general.
Oh no, yeah, I think definitely.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there are certainly, Brando's an example, right? He started out in theater, he went to film, and he's like, going back there. Film's it, right?
Right.
But he had that experience to begin with.
Genova Vaughn was in the last theater show that I did in Springfield, the Contemporary Theater. One. Right. Yeah. We did Race, the Mammoth.
Yeah.
And so I had recommended Genova to Doc Summers, who's the director. And I recommended her, and she got cast in it. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I wound up playing opposite her on it through a weird little event that happened. I wound up getting the lead part on the other side. And so I had kind of talked her into it. I kind of was like, you'd be perfect for this part. When I read it, I thought of her immediately. I didn't know her really well at the time, but she was doing...
We worked with her on Pushing Envelopes.
We'd done Pushing Envelopes, and she had worked on... she had been doing some scene work with Jana's class at in Springfield. So I went to Genova, and I was like, you ought to try it. You'd be great. And I didn't think much of it. Well, then we start rehearsing, and I remember her coming up to me one day and going, "You have got to be kidding me. This is so incredibly hard. I am scared to death." And I think of Genova as a very, very great performer. She is. She's a super great performer. Very solid, a very giving performer if you're on stage or in a scene. But anyways, she cursed my name for a while because of the sheer amount of lines that show was. I think I had 7. That show holds the record for the most pages of lines that I had. And I was on stage for every single scene for the entire show. And
that's crazy.
Genova was second, and I think she was only off stage for like maybe 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So she had just as many lines as I did. And it was tough, but man, we threaded the needle on it, and it was so much fun to do it. But what was so cool was watching her like navigate that, because from that acting perspective, from going from film to theater, and I've had multiple people come up to me afterwards and go, man, I really want to try that. I'm like, it's different.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel the same way. What was crazy, this is just a little tidbit, but this is where Genova helped me out a bunch, is when we were doing the film, she did some work as first AD on Land of Milk and Honey.
Okay.
And as we were filming some of these scenes, you know, when you're acting, you get done with the scene and it's like, all right, pack up, we're moving to the next one. And I was like, how did I do on that? I didn't get any applause on that one. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
You know,
I can
usually
imagine.
if you're on stage and you do a good job, it's, hey, good job, good job, good job. Well, then we get up here and you got, 15 people watching, and you get done with this scene and they go, okay, that's a wrap. Let's go to the next scene. And you're like,
Yeah.
was
I
that
can see
okay?
that. Sure.
Did that work? You don't get that constant feedback.
Yeah.
That's what Genova did for me, though. I don't know if she knew it, but she would walk up to me and she goes, that was really good. I was like, thank you so much. That's the big difference, at least coming from my perspective to that was the biggest difference, is that not that constant feedback. I guess that's what it would be.
You don't get that instant pop.
And you can't hear the audience,
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about going to screenings with an audience that hasn't seen it yet, right? Is the fact that you in your mind, you think that, okay, well, this is going to be the spot where there's going to be a reaction. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there's not, and sometimes it's not the reaction that you thought it was, and sometimes it's in a totally different beat.
And it's the same thing for theater. You can be rehearsing a scene for months or weeks or day after day after day, and everybody laughs at it and thinks it's great. Or here's the worst one. All right, this is the worst one. Everybody laughs and thinks it's great, and then you get the night of the show and nobody laughs.
Nothing.
And your delivery is totally wrong and it doesn't fit, and you've been guffawing trying to get that laugh. But I'll tell you this, and this almost broke me one time. I was doing a show, and there were a couple people in the audience that just liked to laugh. Like, they were on the casting crew, so the director and all that stuff, and they would laugh at this one person because they liked him, they were their friend and that kind of stuff, and they would just sit and laugh. Well, I had an actually pretty funny part in the show, and nobody laughed at any of my stuff, and I was like, I suck at this. Like, I suck at the comedy. I'm not good at the comedy. I'm not going to be very good. And I mean, it really messed me up until opening night. And then I got up there opening night of the show, and people laughed at my stuff the whole time. But that is weird. That's a weird idea. It's a kind of a neat concept that you bring up, is that your idea in your head never really matches up to what the reality of it's going to be.
I mean, it's nice.
It is nice. It's nice,
but
when
it doesn't. Certain things you think, well, that's going to make an impact.
Yeah.
Right. Blows right by.
Yeah.
And then something else that you think was just kind of maybe a blow off moment of some sort is, like I said, gets a big pop from the crowd.
Or the one that you think is going to be the big impact, and it winds up everybody starts laughing.
Yeah. I mean, you really. I mean, that's probably the funnest part of the whole process, right? Is just seeing how it plays.
Right. Well, it's true. That's true. Well, you know what? I want to get into real quick. I want to start talking about some of your actual movie. I did a little bit of a deep dive onto a couple of your films here, or one in particular.
I needed the money.
The first one I want to talk about is Lady.
Yeah.
2015. Can you talk about just like the production of that film? And I'm going to leave a link in the show notes of this film, because it's out there. Anybody can go out and watch it.
Yeah.
It's about 30 minutes and some change.
26 minutes.
Is it 26 minutes?
Ish, yeah.
Filmed very well. They did a really good job. I think if I had any critiques on it, there was maybe a couple critiques with the dog.
Yeah.
And
dogs and kids,
and Lady,
or animals and kids.
For those that don't know, Lady is the dog's name,
right? Yes.
And so talk about
his real name is Eastwood.
Eastwood. Yeah. I saw that in the credits. I was like, that's such a cool name. I should have named my dog that.
Eastwood was cool.
So, and Eastwood was a boy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to do some hiding of the kibbles and bits there.
They just filmed it just right, I guess.
Yeah.
I've never just tried to figure it out.
Right. So talk a little bit about that production, getting on that production. And the only reason why I kind of focus on this one is you had some levels on this that you weren't playing just a bad guy. He was he was a conflicted character in this, and you played it really well.
Thank you.
But the production on it, the filming on it was good. You had some highs and lows in there, mostly lows.
It was,
Lady's not a toe. It's not a toe tapper.
No, I believe that if I remember right, the director described it as a backwoods noir.
So kind of like in the vein of like a Winter's Bone.
Yeah,
would be kind of a backwoods noir.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
I think so.
So talk a little bit about the production, what you can remember. That was 5 years ago.
I mean, it's still very vivid. I loved being a part of that film and of that cast and crew. There was a tremendous crew, and essentially what happened is they had graduated from film school, and the director, the parents owned property up north of Springfield in what's called Phoenix, I believe. There's a big quarry up there.
Okay.
Which, ironically enough, I had filmed a Sato film, which was a space film there prior. So I'd been there once before.
So you'd been there before.
Been there once before. But they owned a lot of property up there, and they owned the house that's in the film was a house that's still on the property, as far as I know. The trailer in the film had been a film that somebody just walked away from.
Well, it's funny. I had the locations, because it filmed in Phoenix, it filmed in Ash Grove, Walnut Grove, and Buffalo.
Correct.
And then the exterior and interior of the house, that was the same in that film?
Yes.
It was?
It was.
Wow, they did a good job on that thing.
Tremendous.
And then the dog, his name was Eastwood. It was W.C. Fields, right? About working with dogs? Or kids and animals, right?
I mean, for the most part, Eastwood is very well trained.
Well, okay.
So
it was an actual, legit...
No. I mean, he's a working dog. He is trained, but I mean, he's a working dog.
Okay.
Right? So he's not an actor. But
now, how long did it take you all to shoot that film?
6 days.
6 days?
Yeah, 6 12-hour days. It was fall, as I recall, going into fall, and I'm wearing coveralls for most of the film, so it wasn't so hot that
Dickies, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the branding, but it could have been.
It was Dickies.
Could be.
That's a deep dive trivia there.
Yeah.
What coveralls was
Dickies,
Brewer
if they're
wearing?
Looking for a spokesman, I'm available.
What coveralls were Brewer wearing in the film Lady, filmed in 2015? The correct answer is Dickies.
It was. They could have been Carhartts. I'm not sure, but I'm a Dickies fan, so we'll go with Dickies. It was a little chilly of a night. We had some night shoots. But other than that, no, it was just the whole thing was fantastic. They basically reached out to me, come across me on Facebook for some reason. I don't even honestly to this day know why or how, or they saw a picture and they thought, well, this is Brewer. They had already shot a feel reel to raise money. I met the director at the library center and we talked about the things that we both liked and actors and styles and things like that. And it, lightning in a bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
Was Brewer a bad guy?
Not to me.
Not to you?
Mm-mm.
In your mind, when you were filming or doing that film, did the film turn out visually the way that you envisioned that it would when it was being filmed?
I was thrilled with it. Yeah.
Right, but as far as like visually, when you know, because you always see that stuff in your head and you always see that edit in your head, but did it turn out the way that you envisioned that it was going to when you were performing it?
From a standpoint of the production value and what they did with it and the cinematography, which they filmed on a red camera, to that date, I'm trying to think of, I think that was probably the most professional setup that I had the pleasure to be a part of. And I mean that from an equipment standpoint and from a crew standpoint, because it was mostly crew. There were only, 3 or 4 of us in the entire film. Miss Lee had showed up and played my wife, or I play her husband in that. And the big guy, Brandon, was in there. Yeah, I was amazed, to be honest with you, with the way that it went. And it did not compete, but in the short film category, it played at Cannes.
Oh, it did?
It did, yeah.
So they screened it?
Yes.
Really? Mm-hmm. That is cool.
Yeah, and it took part. I don't know that it was. I assume that it was a part of the competition because it was also involved with the Dusties in New York too.
Well, folks, if you get a chance and you haven't seen it, it is. It's a very well done film. I enjoyed it. I think I've watched it, probably 3 times. I thought you did a really good job in it.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
It's one thing that I liked about it. Whoever did the editing on it did it. You after a couple minutes, you don't even really notice the cuts, and that's always kind of a testament. I think to a good editor is just how that flows. It's also a testament to the cinematographer of just being able to produce shots that flow kind of cohesively in with others. And so I thought they did a really good job on it. It was a good film.
Well, it was just again, it was an incredible experience, and I still keep in touch with many of the cast and crew and the director and the writer, and I hope to work with them again. And
really, that's what's kind of awesome about working on these little independent films here locally in the Springfield area. It's about the people that you meet, the friendships that you make.
Yeah, it's everything.
And it really does. We kind of help fuel each other to keep us going and kind of stay in Frosty. I want to talk about a little film I found out about. It's actually a web series that I found out about called Shadowbound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My good friend Nathan Shelton, it's his project.
So I don't know how I found this. I found it somehow.
I don't know either. I don't think that I sent that to you. So
no, you didn't. And so I forget what I was doing. I think I saw the poster for it. I was like, yeah, that's a really cool poster. Wonder who. And so then I saw someone that I thought looked like you.
Yeah.
That doesn't really look like you on it.
I'm aged a little bit, quite a bit. I hope.
It wasn't that far ago. That was only 5. That was about 5 years ago.
No. I mean, I'm wearing a fair amount of makeup.
So that was about the same time as Lady then.
I don't honestly quite remember the time frame, but yeah, I would have thought it would have been in the vicinity.
Nathan Shelton directed that, which Nathan has since moved to Chicago. Mm-hmm. But he plays the lead, and I've only gotten into the first episode, but I really liked that.
Oh,
I thought that was really well done.
It was.
It had a really good production value in just the first episode. And I've actually, my YouTube just popped up here a while ago, and episode 2's popped up. And so I'm kind of like, all right, I'm going to have to watch.
There are 5.
Yeah, there's 5 episodes. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Are you in quite a bit of that?
That character, which is Detective Benedict, is in a couple of episodes very heavily. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as the process and what it was, Nathan is a a huge fan of Lovecraft. And so I think that reflects
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, I think that reflects some of the subject matter, a lot of it. It's got a who's who of folks that I had been lucky enough to work with before, and
I saw something that is
have moved on, and so on and so forth.
Brittany Greer.
Yep, Miss Brittany. Yeah,
she's in that.
Yeah,
which I didn't know that. I mean, I saw. I was like, I know Brittany. Brittany's in that.
Which I because you've given me the opportunity here, I will shout out to her web series as well, which is Strange Happenings.
And are you in that?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah.
Mickey Stone. Yeah. He's in everything.
But it's fantastic. I mean,
so is it out there on YouTube to
production,
watch?
Yeah, it's. I believe there are 5 episodes of that as well, and yeah, they're both web series are out there in their entirety.
And that one's called
Strange Happenings.
Strange Happenings.
Yeah, and I would say the best way to describe it, knowing that she is such a huge fan, would be that it's similar to Kolchak, the Night Stalker.
That's a deep dive.
It is a deep dive. Yeah. I was always a fan, and she is definitely a fan, because it's definitely more than just a head nod to that particular series.
Well, give me just a second here. I am looking.
Yeah,
I remember I sent you a message after I read Mandy for the first time, and I wanted to see if there was anything. Not Mandy, Lady.
Oh, okay.
You've got too many. You got Mandy, Lady, Emily. Mandy is your Nicolas Cage film that you like.
Did you ever watch Mandy?
I haven't watched it yet. I need to watch it.
Yeah. I actually have I've not watched it yet, but I have another film that I have high hopes for from him, which is based off Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space. So
I haven't seen that. Is there a trailer out for it?
Yes.
So it hasn't been released yet.
It has been, yeah. It's actually out on video now. Interestingly enough, just as trivia for whoever might want to know, the gentleman that directed that was the director that dropped out of the Brando version of The Island of Dr. Moreau and had not directed anything since.
And was this the guy that like went?
He went and lived in the jungle.
He lived in the jungle while they were filming
it.
And he dressed up as one of the...
He was one of the animal people.
Did they ever do a documentary about that?
They did, and it's fantastic, yeah.
But it doesn't focus on him, does it? It just focuses on the...
No, it does.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, they have... it's pretty extensive, the interviews that they have.
And Val Kilmer was kind of a butthole, too, on that, wasn't he?
There was a few negative things, I think.
I think him and Brando
it was not a good
it.
time, I think, for Val. And
so I remember one of the things that I sent you after I got done watching Lady, and I knew there was a point that I was missing. And I think that this is something it's an interesting idea, is that
all right.
I wrote, you were very believable, and I got to the point where I saw your character instead of you.
That's good.
And I think that that's one of those things that we have as contemporaries, as people that work in this little area here of independent film. We have not only obligation as actors, but we also have the good fortune and sometimes bad fortune of seeing our peers and our friends go and do films. The suspension of belief on some things becomes very hard because you know that person, and sometimes it's very hard to be able to separate that. It would be one thing to separate, like, Matthew McConaughey, because none of us know him. It would be easy to separate him from a character and go, wow, he did pretty good on that, because we don't really know who he is anyways. That Matthew McConaughey is probably not the real Matthew McConaughey. He's selling a character.
Yeah.
24/7. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting about that was when I saw you do your performance of Lady, was when it was over with, was watching you and going, I didn't see Mickey, I saw Brewer. And that's kind
awesome.
of that little. It is awesome.
Could not appreciate that more.
Yeah, I think that was. I knew there was something that really kind of stuck out with me, and that's what it was. So thanks for letting me look that up. So Shadowbound, that is the web series is out there for that.
It is, yeah.
Strange Happenings, which you play what character in that film or that?
I'm a
that
warlock.
You're a warlock. So you are like a backwoods noir hero / villain, anti-hero.
What do you see Brewer as? Do you see him as a bad guy?
I see Brewer
Not
as...
to give too much away, but...
Well, no, I don't see Brewer as a bad guy necessarily, but I don't see him as someone that makes good decisions.
I can see nothing to,
like multiple.
Yeah,
he makes multiple bad decisions.
Front.
Yeah. But that doesn't make him a bad guy. It just makes him interesting.
I think, again, not to give like too much away for that character, but I think that it's very true that he's in life not in a good situation. He's probably not had the opportunity that maybe a lot of other people had, and he may not, what opportunity he did have, he might not have done a very good job with it. But, I mean, there's also some, I think he's got a heart for sure. And, that character to me is pretty complete.
There's a film out there that I'm curious about, and it kind of goes into that thing that we all look at about films that don't get finished. And
all right.
I saw one of your directing credits on IMDb, and not to call you out or anything like that, but I'm curious about this film, and I wanted to see. So has it been filmed?
Consequentio.
Yeah. Has it been filmed?
Principal has been filmed, yes.
Principal has been filmed.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us about it? What's the status of it?
Yeah, I mean, I can, sure. It has been in the can, as they say, for some time. It was meant to be...
That you wrote this.
I did, yeah.
You directed it.
Uh-huh.
It's your producer credit.
One of them, yeah.
And you're acting in it.
Yes.
Okay.
And probably transportation.
your transportation in it.
Stunts, possibly.
So you've committed the cardinal sin of the auteur on this one.
Yeah.
By doing it all.
Yeah. I'm like Brando did with One-Eyed Jacks, right? I've filmed 8 miles of film.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's editing it?
Well, funny you should mention that. There was I had an editor lined up originally that fell through essentially, and I got the film back, and with the help of a friend of mine, I cut a semi-rough cut, and that's where we're at now, basically. So it was meant to be a very art house picture.
Who lensed it?
I don't know if you know Chris Gregg or not.
Yeah, I know Chris Gregg.
You know Chris, yeah. He shot it for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then to be intercut, we'll see whether this tempers or not. How you feel about it. But it was to be intercut with another short film that had also not been finished in order to make a finished film.
Oh.
That was my theory. It still is my theory. But
so you had another film that had basically footage out there.
Yes.
And you were going to take that footage from that film and intercut it with this one.
Correct.
Did you write this?
I wrote both.
But did you write this film with the idea of doing that? And so you wrote that one knowing that you were going to intercut both up together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Not the original one, obviously, but Consequentio, yes.
And so you wrote the original one as well?
Yes. Yeah. That was actually probably one of the first things that I did was write that short story. Like I'm not a screenwriter. I write in short story form.
Right.
That's how I write. But
how long are these short films?
The first one, which was Rain in Hell, RAIN. I think that I want to say that the finished cut that we had on it, to the extent that we had it, was somewhere around 20 minutes for that first short film. And then the Consequentio, we had, another. I basically was, trying to have obviously enough footage to make a complete feature. That was the original intent.
So
you're going to come over tonight and help me edit?
2021? Is it going to be out in 2021?
I would like to think that it will be, finished and put together and out there.
I tell you what, if I get this next one done, which I just, wrapped on this time last year.
I'm not gonna put your feet to the fire, but
no,
that's
if you want help on that, dude, I would love to.
Yeah.
And
essentially that, long story short, that was, and it happens so much, right? Is that there's something along the chain of production, typically in post-production, falls by the wayside.
So what happened to that one? If you don't mind me asking, like why did it, is it just the edit? Is it just the edit that you're struggling with now?
Consequentio.
Yeah.
Well, let me be clear. I helped direct a short film. Actually, I guess a couple, really, but had never fully directed. Right. And that's a beast all unto itself, as you well know, because, But it just gets back to our editing, scenario that we went through. I really didn't have the coverage that I would have liked to have had when it was all said and done.
Gotcha.
Which presented some problems.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that it can't be done, though. So.
Oh, no, it can totally get done. You can do like David Lynch and throw a monkey in it or something like that.
Yeah. I can go out and film a plastic bag.
Yeah.
Swirling around.
That's... I guarantee you that's why half of those happen. That's why half of those happen. So how many, so since we're on the topic of films that have yet to be released, how many films in your career of independent films, how many films have you filmed that have not been released?
I would say conservatively, at least 10.
Seriously?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So that's pretty high percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe it's just me.
I doubt it. I really do doubt it.
No, I think that the percentage on the whole is pretty high, right?
Well, you look at it,
especially when you're looking at it, as you're properly pointing out, as independent, micro to no budget film, right?
They're independent films.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're multiple tier independent films. They're not just independent films nowadays are.
It could still be
$2.5 million films.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. There's a film that you and I had talked about a little bit earlier, which I don't believe it may be on IMDb, but I don't think that I'm on the page yet, and I want to make sure and give a shout out to Jeffrey Williams is the filmmaker. It's I had worked with Jeffrey on another film called Everything, which is a feature film that he produced here locally a few years ago, and he'd also had some success with a film prior to that, which was a film and kind of like an interactive game called Dark Star. The newest one that he is working on is I don't want to say like it's a translation, but it's from a graphic novel, which was real, and it's kind of like a mixture of green screen and animation. which he does. So I'm looking to make sure that I give proper shout outs here.
I don't see that on your...
I don't think that it's come up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had just talked with Jeff just the other day about wardrobe for it. So, I mean, that's something that's coming up hopefully within the next year or so.
And we have a town in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Sorrow's Way.
Yes.
By the Devil's Watch 2.
Uh-huh.
And by the Devil's Watch 2. How was the first one?
Well, there wasn't a first one. It just went straight to 2.
It just went to 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to help out as best I can, but I'm not doing a very good job. The town in the middle of nowhere was a feature, and Sorrow's Way was a short film that was shot. I guess it was very early this year. Now that I think about it, I kind of thought that it was last year, but it was this year. Laureen Landon was pretty awesome to work with.
That was like in January or February, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That you started working on that?
Yeah.
And it was it at Rockaway Beach?
It was in Rockaway Beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some photos on that.
Yeah.
How was that experience working on that one?
It was great. Yeah, it was great because essentially what it was, Chuck France and Ben Larson called me on the phone one day. I almost worked with Chuck before. I had worked with Ben. Actually, I think I worked with Ben on Shadowbound, to be honest with you. And they had a concept for a feature film, and they wanted to shoot a short, essentially, to move that theory on down the road to make it into a feature. So we shot that. We just basically shot a scene, which turned out to be a little short film with Lorene and I. Yeah.
Is that one out?
I do not believe that it is out yet.
Okay.
No.
So it is in like bona fide post production.
Correct. Yeah. And the Jeffrey's upcoming film is a sci-fi film, and it is called To Meet the Faces You Meet.
To Meet the Faces You Meet.
Yeah.
That's deep.
And Robert Picardo is starring in it.
Robert Picardo.
He's of, I believe, Star Trek. Patton Oswalt lending his voice. Now, you mentioned Damien. There was a part that I was supposed to do in his PTSD film, and that was a situation where scheduling did not come to pass. But
okay,
I think he's done. I think he's wrapped on that.
That's Pray They Stand Down. Mm-hmm. Chad Bianco's in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Genova
is in it. Yeah,
is in that.
I was going to go on there for a day. Yeah, and I wound up. I had another commitment that conflicted. So,
because that's a PTSD film that kind of deals in that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want to say I want to say they have a trailer out there, and before this comes out, I'll go out and post it. I think they posted a trailer for it. They did actually. Yeah, they actually did post a trailer for it. It looked good. Chad looked like a ninja. He was
Chad is a ninja.
He was flipping people over his back and beating them up, and I was like, oh man. So yeah.
See, I'm probably lucky I didn't have to show up for that.
Yeah, you were probably the guy they were gonna throw. And
it's gonna be the one that was thrown through the window. That was an interesting. I watched an interview the other day, well, obviously long since passed, with Burt Reynolds, right?
Oh yeah,
and he's talking about his. I think he was on Letterman when he was telling the story, but so and he got he got started with stunt work, right?
Right.
Because he was the one that was silly enough to fall off a horse and be thrown through windows and all that stuff. So it got to a point where, and I'm probably butchering this, but it got to a point where he was going to have his break in some television show, right? And he was an extra, and he was doing this stunt where they throw him through a window, right? And he lands on the street or whatever, and the detectives come up, and he's alive, right? And he's kind of got this monologue kind of a thing that he was, telling his mom about and whatever, and everybody come watch this or whatever. And so
I think it was Gunsmoke, wasn't it?
It may have been Gunsmoke,
and
the guy came up and forgot his line. Basically, where the guy said, "Well, are any of them alive?" And he forgets his line, and he just goes, "No." So he doesn't get his close up. He doesn't, and he still got thrown through the window and paid nothing for it, But yeah.
Well, Mickey, we've been talking for this fifth take here. We've been talking for an hour and a half. So we've been talking for. I think you got here at what time? It was probably close to
2:30.
2:30. Yeah. So we've been going at this for a while.
Good luck editing this down.
Well, it's only an hour and a half right now. So if I take this one, I'm in good shape. Mickey, I want to thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to post some of the links from some of your stuff out there.
Okay, I appreciate it. Yeah.
If you have any more films that come up, obviously we'll put some of those on. I'm going to have you back on once we get through this crazy alternate universe, and we get back into you working on some film sets. We're going to get you in and kind of pick your brain on what's going on. But
I encourage, and I hope that anyone that goes out and sees any of the work, I mean, whatever that work was, I was just especially in certain things anyway, a minor part of it, but of the filmmakers and the cast and crew that are involved in all those projects, please watch it, share it, and appreciate their work, because when it comes right down to it, on a film, I mean, the crew is that's what
it's
makes
everything.
It
is. It's everything.
Betty Davis knew that, so
that's right.
Betty Davis always took care of the crew people.
You know what? And they
took care of her.
A lot of them are unsung. Just about
Absolutely.
all of them are unsung. Yeah. Aside from the director and the cinematographer, most people don't know who does everything else on a film set. But I can guarantee you, those people are working just as hard,
or harder.
Or harder. Yeah.
And if I would say that's one of the pluses to having worked on independent films, is the fact that you're subjected to what everybody's doing, right? And
definitely.
And the jobs that have to be done in order to get this one scene knocked out. There's a lot of work and a lot of passion and a lot of love.
Next time you're on set, give your fellow crew member a hug. Wear a mask, though.
Well, yeah, stay 6 feet away. Give them an air hug.
Air hug.
Yeah.
Nah, give him a hug.
But make sure you're wearing a body glove when you do it.
Mickey, thanks for being on here, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
I love you, brother.
I love you too.
Let's do this again sometime.
All right.
All right.
Next time the power goes out, I'll be here when the lights come on.
You have been listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Analysis of your biometrics have been compiled and calculated. You are now a minuscule part of the collective. Enjoy the rest of your pitiful day.